This is The Sound of Young America. I'm Jesse Thorn, America's radio sweetheart. My guest on the program is comedian and actor and writer Paul F. Tompkins. You may recognize him from Mr. Show with Bob and David, from the recent Tenacious D film, from Best Week Ever on VH1, or maybe from the sitcom DAG, starring David Alan Grier. Paul, welcome to The Sound of Young America.
Thank you, Jesse.
It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Well, I imagine it is. I'm with me all the time.
Were you thinking about
delighted.
it? Were you thinking about it on the way here? Like, oh, they're gonna love this. I
was
imagine
thinking Jesse's going to be delighted.
Well, I know that you have a gift for empathy, so that's why you would be able to understand how I would feel. About. I was watching a live show a couple months ago here in Los Angeles in which you appeared, and you talked a little bit about doing a network television pilot, and the fact that they insisted that you wear some sort of prosthetic tooth.
Yes.
I don't understand what it is, though. I feel like you have a charming gap in your front teeth, sort of like me or comedian David Letterman or any number of other
Lauren Hutton.
Yes,
one of the original supermodels.
Successful and attractive people who have gaps in whose parents couldn't afford orthodontics when they were children.
That's right.
You were making a network television pilot. What did they like? How did this come up?
Well, I auditioned for the show, and then when it was clear that I was going to get the role, that was the contingency. You know, they call my manager and they say the role is his on one condition. And then I already knew what it was. As soon as my manager said that, I knew exactly what it was going to be. And I said, And she said, they want you to get your teeth fixed. So I went to a dentist to get something that is called a flipper, which is a piece that I can put in and take out. And in fact, they made Letterman wear one.
It's called a flipper?
It's called a flipper, yeah, because you flip it in and out.
What do you mean you flip it in and out?
Well, you've
worn the thing. I need you to
stick it into your mouth. You know,
Right.
it's like a little denture that is molded to the roof of your mouth, and so there's a little piece of enamel that makes it appear as if my two front teeth join normally. So there's even a fake line in the middle of it, you know, to give the appearance of just.
So you wear it over your whole front. It's like a
no. It slides into the gap.
Oh, wow.
It slides into the gap. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's very neat. Like you wouldn't because I finally saw the pilot and you really can't tell that's what it is.
Would you ever wear it on sort of like a hobbyist basis?
Not quite sure.
Like casually?
Do you ever no.
Oh, today.
Like make it my hobby to wear that thing?
Yeah.
What a terrible hobby. Boy, oh boy, back to the stamp drawing board. I have worn it now for auditions and other on-camera roles when I'm not being myself. You know, for anything that requires me to be me, I just go au naturel, meaning I'm nude. I do a lot of nude work these days. But I just did a couple episodes of the Showtime show Weeds, and I wore it for that. I was playing a teacher, and it was like, well, why not? You know,
teachers have great teeth. That's
well, you know,
it's a character
it
thing.
eliminates that conversation when I go to the audition. You know, it eliminates that doubt in my mind.
Is that a conversation that you'd had before?
It's come up before, yeah, absolutely.
It's such a curious thing. I mean, you're a comedian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
I mean,
of course.
Having a gap in your teeth, if you're a comedian, is a trademark or signature.
Well, it's also who cares, you know. Like I don't understand the logic of, you know, for a sitcom that was also about quote unquote regular people, like a typical American family. That was the premise of the sitcom. I don't know why that became such an important thing. Like, I guess they thought it was hideous to look at. That being said, I have my own self-consciousness about it when I see myself on camera, as I think anyone who sees himself on camera does. That, you know, like I'm not thrilled with the way it looks, but once somebody tells me that they don't like the way it looks, then you go to hell, you know. It's one thing for me to say it, but I don't want to hear it from you.
You'll go to the mat for the gap between your teeth. Is that what you're saying?
No. I will just get upset.
Did you ever consider like actually having some sort of permanent adjustment
I
to your face?
I still think about it. Ideally, what I would love to do is just close it a little bit. Just close it a little bit, and maybe fix the ones on the side so it's a more uniform smile. But I would never want to get rid of it completely. Because
this is a city, Los Angeles, where cosmetic dentistry is the rule rather than an aberration. It seems like,
and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not like I would have a hard time finding someone who could, do it. But because I think I could get it, I could probably have it to specifications that I was happy with, and that maybe people wouldn't even notice necessarily, and then everybody wins. But we'll see. I think about it. Sometimes I think, yes, I'll do it. Sometimes I think, no, I won't. Well, because I have a lot of people that in my life and even people I don't know that when I told that story on stage, when I talked about that on stage, there were people that got very upset at the idea of even somebody suggesting that I cover it up, much less change it permanently. There were people that had very strong opinions about what I should do with my mouth.
Did you take a straw poll of some kind?
No, I did not. These people were offering their opinions.
Unbidden.
Spontaneously. Yes.
What do you feel like there was some? Did you get a good sense of the public opinion on the matter?
Oh, not one person has ever said, "Yeah, you should go ahead and do that." Not one person. Everyone tries to talk me out of it. But my feeling is, well, you didn't have to live with it, and you don't have to live with it. It is.
It's an astonishing burden.
Yeah, well, it can be. When growing up as a kid, it was made me very self-conscious. To this day, it's very rare that I can smile with my mouth open for a photograph. I'm aware of it all the time. Whenever the idea of my appearance comes into question when a camera is pointed at me, that's the first thing I think about.
You're listening to Tooth Talk on the Sound of Young America with comedian Paul F. Tompkins.
I wanted to call it Teeth Talk.
Yeah, well,
we put both names in a hat.
I wanted to focus in on one particular tooth. You wanted to go crazy with every tooth in the world.
There are so many teeth.
Yeah, but I need to know that the show's about something.
I understand.
It can't just be the typical American family.
No, that's why I caved.
And all their teeth.
That's right.
You were talking about being self-conscious as a kid. Mm-hmm. What kind of kid were you? Were you the comedian kid, or were
absolutely.
you not?
No, I definitely was the class clown, and I grew up in a big family, and I wanted attention, and so I was always joking around and very much was not afraid to call attention to myself.
How many were in your family?
6. I'm number 5 out of 6.
That's pretty low on the totem pole. Did you have to do a lot of defending of your territory?
Not so much. I mean, my older brother and I fought a lot, but it was ridiculous because he was so much bigger than I was. He's the tallest person in our family, so when we would fight, it'd be like me fighting a man. There was just I had no chance of winning ever. So I would make a sort of token effort, and then I would be defeated almost instantly. So the fight went on. The fight went on for as long as he wanted it to go on. But me and my younger brother got along just fine.
Was there a goofing around competition going on in your family?
Not so much. I mean, we were all my family's all pretty jocular, and everybody's funny. I have to say, I like spending time with my family. They all make me laugh, but I think I went the extra mile. I needed it.
How did you? Hang on, just a second.
Uh-oh. What's happening?
Well, must be something else. Thought I heard the
classics.
Thought I heard. I know. That's where that extra noise comes from. How did you decide to become a comedian rather than a guy that was funny? How did you decide to actually? Okay, let me start that question.
I want to hear about the other career where you're just a guy that's funny. It sounds easier.
How did you decide to make? Stop making fun of my questions, Tompkins.
I apologize.
It's my program.
Of course.
You're here as my guest.
But of course.
How did you decide to make comedy your career?
Well, it's something that I always wanted to do, but I never gave much thought to how you go about doing it. I think without actually intellectualizing it to myself, it just seemed impossible. It just seemed like, well, some people do that, and they're somehow magically they make a living at doing it.
At what age are we talking about? Like in your teen years?
I think even earlier than that. I mean, I just always, I always loved it. You know, I always wanted to be in show business in some way, and I used to love comics on TV, watching. I remember getting excited when on a talk show when they would say we have a comedian tonight, because that's the ultimate. Like, if you want attention, that is the ultimate attention, where it's just you standing there and people are laughing. You know, and that's why I never wanted to be a talk show host. I always wanted to be the guest on the talk show. You know, like I never wanted to be in the cast of SNL. I wanted to be the host of SNL because there was so much more focused on you. You know, you're made a bigger deal.
It's amazing that you made that distinction.
Oh yeah. Well, it took me a long time to realize like that. It kind of hit me way late in life. I think like even a few years ago, I realized, I want to be the host, because people would ask me, "You ever try out for SNL? Do you do characters?" or something? Like, no, and then I realized, I always when I was a kid and I would fantasize about it, I would be the host of the show, you know, and I would be doing the monologue at the top, you know, and interacting with all the people that I liked on the show. But I got into it because a friend of mine from high school was a couple years older than I was. When he graduated, he went to Arizona State University and started doing stand-up out there. Then he came back to Philly and said, "Do you want to get an act together?" And I said, "Sure." And that was it. We took a month to kind of work up an act, and then, you know, July 11th, 1986 was the first time I went on stage to do stand-up comedy.
How is it that you know that date?
I will just always remember it. I'll just always remember it. It was a Friday night, I believe. No, it was a Thursday night, because the Comedy Works in Philadelphia used to do their open mic on a Wednesday, and the Comedy Factory Outlet in Philadelphia did their open mic on a Thursday. So
that's
the first
a prestigious
time we went up,
joint, the
yes,
Comedy Factory Outlet.
Absolutely. Both gone, which is so crazy, because there was a time in my life they were the two most important buildings in the world, you know, and now they're completely, there's no record of them having existed pretty much. But that was it. We did, it was a guy named Rick Roman was my partner, who has passed away since then. And we were a team. We did sort of sketches. It wasn't a straight man, crazy guy kind of thing. We did little scenes. And they were sort of absurdist. We were very influenced by Monty Python, and that was our sensibility. You know, it was just kind of weird stuff.
Did you mentioned those two buildings, the two big clubs in Philadelphia, being the most important buildings in the world to you? Did you kind of set up in residence in those clubs the way the comedians do? Just you're there every night?
Yeah, pretty much. At the time, these clubs were a block from each other. And you had to make a choice. You had to either be a Comedy Works guy or you were a Comedy Factory Outlet guy. You were not allowed to work both clubs because the owners of the clubs hated each other. So I was a Comedy Works guy because the comedy there was a little less aggressive. At the Outlet, it was run by a guy who would make appearances on the local morning zoo station. So the comedy was much more aggressive and much more insult-based, and I just didn't fit in over there. So it was the Comedy Works, and I was there every week to do the open mics. I would MC on the weekends and go see shows there all the time until the Funny Bone opened on South Street, and that was a place that was crazy. That was a club it was a Tuesday through Sunday club. It was a week-long gig, and I would MC there. I would feature there. I only headlined there once, but I was there all the time because I lived right around the corner, and that place was a debauched, insane. They went through, I think, 6 managers in about 5 years.
What was getting rid of them?
I think the owner is finally saying, "Wait a minute, why are we losing so much money? It must be the manager." And then they would fire that manager, and then somebody else would come in. And so the way we knew that there was a new manager was the prices of the beer would change for the comics. So it'd either be free, or it'd be $1, or it'd be half price, or you get one free and then the rest are $1, or it would be one for $1 and the rest are full price. You know, so one thing did not change is that after the manager would leave, whoever was kind of running the club that night, we would stay there. We would lock the doors and stay there until 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning. We were there till the sun came up many times because the club was upstairs from the street, and then the showroom was not visible from the street, from the doors. So we would lock the doors, turn out the lights in the lobby, and then go into the showroom and get as drunk as anyone has ever gotten.
On a consistent basis?
On a consistent basis.
Did that take its toll on you?
Absolutely, it did. You know, I'm 27.
Yeah, you look. You look. I'd say. I mean, I understand what you're saying because you look like you're maybe 30.
Absolutely.
So that's fast aging.
It didn't. It didn't take that much of a toll because I was in my early 20s, and my body still had that elasticity that it lacks now. So I could take a lot of punishment. I could take a lot of self-inflicted punishment.
Were you working? I mean, were you working off stage?
At that time, no. I'd finally gotten to the point where I was making a living from stand-up. And most of that came from that one club because I was the closest guy, so the call would go out, this guy canceled or, I don't feel like going through a list of names. Let's just get Paul in here again. It was fantastic. It really was great.
What were the characteristics? I mean, I'm sure were you working on the road a little bit at the time as
well?
No,
so rarely. Because I started comedy at the beginning of the comedy boom of the 80s, where any place that had a spare couple inches would stick a microphone in there and have stand-up because it was so cheap. There was almost zero overhead. So there was so much work around town and then just kind of in the suburbs that I didn't really have to travel that far. So I didn't really start working the road until a few years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
And when you say a few years ago, I mean, your comedy career is now about 20 years in.
21 years. Yeah.
And that's very unusual.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
My guest is comedian Paul F. Tompkins, who was born and raised in the comedy clubs of Philadelphia. Do you think you got something in particular out of the Philadelphia scene? Like, do you think that the comedy world there had particular qualities that you could recognize? Yeah,
I think I got a thick skin from performing there because that was a city that if they didn't care for you, they would let you know it in no uncertain terms, and it was great because you had to be on your toes, and it made going to other places so much easier, that when I go to a lot of cities where people think they're heckling, but they don't know what they're doing. I've been heckled, and that's nothing, to the point where now if I know the difference when someone is just into the show and they get excited, and so they say something, and I realize that guy's doesn't mean any harm. He's just enjoying himself and he's kind of getting in on the act. I know the difference between that and when somebody is actively trying to ruin my show. It's and I don't think some people might not be able to make that distinction, but I know immediately.
Philadelphia has kind of a reputation, at least in sports, for berating its hometown. It's Steve Carlton's and Mike Schmidt's.
Yeah, you better be doing what we expect you to do, and if you for one game, like you can't have an off game. You are a bum. It's hero, one slip up, bum, and then you have to prove yourself all over again. While you're on that streak, you can do no wrong and everybody loves you. But the moment there's a slip up, you're back to square one.
Were there any situations when you were coming up that you just like totally lost control because of hecklers who were being aggressive?
Tons. I used to get so worked up if somebody would disrupt the show because it's, if the psychology at play is that I want attention, someone who's heckling or saying anything during my show, that means they're taking the attention away from me, and that cannot happen. So I would get it took me a long time to learn to start out soft with people that are talking during a show and then feel it out and see what you need to do, So, but at first it was, anybody said anything, my instinct was, I have to shut them down. And I was really nasty about it. And sometimes the crowd would not be on my side. Can
you think of instances or examples?
I can think of examples, but they're not fit for broadcast the things that I would say, honestly. And there were times that it would bum the crowd out. Like I would say something because somebody yelled something, and then it was filthy and horrible and insulting, and then I could feel the audience go, "Oh, that was not warranted."
Did it bum you out like afterwards? Were you like, "Oh man, what did I just do?"
I think it took me a while to understand what I was doing, because I wouldn't get bummed out. I would still be. I wanted it to be somebody else's fault. You know, I didn't want it to be something that I needed to learn or something I needed to get better at. It was hard for me in those days to realize that I was still learning how to do comedy. And I wanted to feel like I already knew. I was in a hurry. It's like being in a hurry to grow up. You know, I wanted to already feel like I have mastered this form and I'm somehow misunderstood. You know, it's not until, honest to God, I would say the last couple years that I feel like, no, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do comedy, and I'm still learning things.
How did you end up leaving Philadelphia?
In, what was it, 94, the bottom had kind of dropped out of the big comedy explosion, and so I had to go back to doing a day job and doing comedy at night, and it was miserable. And I kind of had nothing to lose. And at the time, I was really hung up on this girl, and she was moving to Los Angeles. We had dated briefly, and then we were in this. Then we weren't really dating. We were in this weird nebulous phase where it was kind of flirty, and sometimes things would happen, but it was not. I don't know. It was a horrible thing. But I was always of one mind. So she was moving to Los Angeles, and I thought, well, why don't I go out there? A, for my career, and B, so that we can have the romantic comedy resolution of our relationship. So I moved out to Los Angeles, and she eventually, I think within 3 or 4 years, moved away. But at that point, I was here to stay. You know, I started working day jobs. I kind of gave up on stand-up a little bit because I remember going to the Improv on Melrose the second or third night that I was here, and the show that I saw was so awful. It was their showcase, and these are improv regulars, and the comedy was so just trite and cliched and hacky, and I thought, I can't start all over again here with this and wait in a line. You know, I'd been doing comedy for 8 years by that point and already had a very high opinion of what I was doing. So I sort of gave up on stand-up for a little bit, and that's when I got involved in sketch. And I met Jay Johnston, who was also a Mr. Show regular. We were introduced by mutual friend Adam McKay, the director, who I knew in Philly and Jay knew in Chicago. And that was it. I started getting into sketch. Then I started seeing the alternative shows at coffee houses and little dive bars and things like that. And then I started doing stand-up again, but this time it was a different kind of thing where I kind of realized, oh, I can express myself the way I've wanted to express myself. You know, it doesn't have to be in the established comedy club vernacular, you know. And that was it. And that was kind of the beginning of my re-education of my own stand-up career.
You have a new CD out called Impersonal on AST Records.
Mm-hmm.
Impersonal seems like an unusual title for a comedy CD, since
it's also a terrible title. It's not, who would buy that? Impersonal? What? I have to find out what that means. But to be fair though, comedy, I don't. It doesn't matter what you name a comedy album. I wanted to err on the side of not having something embarrassing as the title. You know, not something that's either a bit out of context or a pun or, you know, some kind of weird play on words or a reference to something that's happening right now that won't make any sense years from now.
Mixed nuts with a Z.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly. So I thought, well, what is this really about? And if I am I anticipating your question? Where that title comes from?
Yeah.
In the liner notes, I talk about it that when I started doing stand up in LA, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say, and so one of my appearances on stage would be a mixture of sort of talking about pop culture stuff that was going on, movies or TV shows or that sort of thing, and these very conceptual bits, which are represented on the CD. And gradually, as I went along, the pop culture stuff kind of faded away because I thought there's something about this that feels a little too easy. It just feels like insidery Angelino, like, hey, we'll all make fun of this. We all think the same thing. And I was sort of aping other people that I had seen to a certain degree as I was trying to figure out who I was on the stage. And then I became more focused on concepts, I think, and these weird flights of fancy and almost like little sketches, and so that's the stand-up. That was the best of my stand-up from those days, and that was the stuff that I would eventually do on Conan and things like that, and on my Comedy Central specials. And so I decided, from a vantage point of having a lot more material now than I did then, I don't do this stuff anymore, so I might as well finally take the plunge and put out a record and start with this stuff. So I kind of want to go in chronological order.
You had been going for, as you mentioned, 21 years before you recorded your first record. Does it feel like, I don't want to say like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly or something, but does it feel like you're in a certain way, like sloughing off the past and looking at something new?
Absolutely, yeah. That's not that crazy an analogy, because it does kind of feel that way. There is definitely a profound feeling in me of I look forward to seeing what I'm going to do next. Where this is going to take me, because I am. It took me a long time to embrace the learning of the stuff that I was learning doing stand-up, and now I'm very excited for it. And so I have this, and also to have these, for me personally, to have these periods of my life documented in that way, of this is how I thought at a certain time. And I think the next CD I put out will probably be a sort of transitional one, of where the bits were getting a little longer and they're more about me, that I sort of figure more prominently in my own comedy, to the point where the stuff I'm doing today, which is much more story oriented and much more personal, and then keeping my mind open towards, I don't know what it's going to be in another 10 years. I don't know what turns my comedy is going to take, and we'll see.
Let me ask you this final question. You're rarely to never seen on stage without a necktie. Typically, I would say a handkerchief that matches your other hosiery.
Right. It's no accident.
Yeah, you've been known to wear a fob from time to time.
It's true.
Have you always worn a necktie on stage?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, when I first started, I think I went in and out of being that completely formal, but yeah, it kind of was always a thing that was with me. I always liked to dress up, and I always felt like, I think it was seeing people on TV, they all wore coats and ties, and I thought, well, that's how you dress up for show business, and so but I think also, there's a sort of, it makes me feel like I'm protected somehow. There is an aspect of it that is kind of like armor, that I'm going up there and I don't feel naked up there. I feel protected by having the jacket. It's my own personal fourth wall, because if stand-up is all about direct engagement of the audience, I have to have some protection up there, so that, so they can't get me. And that's the way I see performances. It's me or them, and I have to win.
Does that go back to an early life of comedy, being heckled like you were Randall Cunningham?
Yeah, exactly. When they were throwing batteries at me. Yes, I think so. But it was also a time when I started, and this is crazy, it makes me feel terribly old, but when I started, it was not uncommon for people to dress up on stage, and it's not like the 50s that we're talking about, the 1990, that wasn't so crazy. And now it's weird when you see a comedian that you've seen a number of times go on Letterman and wear a sports coat. You know, it's like, oh, he's wearing a sports coat. Look who dressed up for TV. You know, I have my friend Eric Tunney, who's a Canadian comic, he's very old fashioned in his style of dress, even more so than me, I think. And he likes to give comics that he knows that wear T-shirts a hard time if they go on TV wearing a T-shirt. And the idea, as you puts it, the idea of bare arms on television just seems so crazy to him.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on The Sound of Young America. It was a pleasure to have you.
A pleasure to be here, Jesse. Thank you very much.
That's our time for The Sound of Young America. I've been your host, Jesse Thorn, America's radio sweetheart. The show's produced by Speaking Into Microphones here at my house in Los Angeles. You can download The Sound of Young America as a free audio and occasionally video podcast by visiting MaximumFun.org or searching for The Sound of Young America in iTunes.